Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I wanted to talk about scale models. So this week's video is largely unscripted. I haven't had a lot of time this week to do my usual preparation because I've been out in the field, so to speak. I've been out on a road trip with the wife, long weekend down in Hampshire and Dorset, visiting the Southwest Model Show at the Tank Museum at Bolton. My all-time favourite museum with a great model show that I've been wanting to go to for a long time, and unfortunately, obviously last year, just when I was due to go, I fell ill with my leg, issues with that, and I was out of action for several weeks, couldn't drive, and we had to postpone everything. Now, fortunately, we were able to postpone delay the hotel booking, and the tickets were still valid for a year. So the Southwest Model Show is actually on twice a year. So the first incarnation for this year was last weekend, and then it's on again middle of September, I believe. So if you're in the area, it's well worth trying to get down there to have a look, because as well as the amazing collection of well over 300 armoured fighting vehicles that are in 10 different displays within the museum, in between them you had these incredible works of miniature art with the scale models of planes, tanks, ships, everything. Absolutely amazing level of detail and craftsmanship, and yes, it's a completely different hobby to wargaming and painting miniatures for wargaming, but there's a lot of crossover in some of the skills and just the level of dedication. They're our sort of geeks, so don't count them out. You know, if you get a chance to go to a model show, do, and particularly if you get to go to this model show, then it's well worth the effort. So we drove down on the Sunday and joined the show early on, and the museum was absolutely packed. Helped, I think, by the fact that it's half term, so there was lots of families, lots and lots of kids. As you'll be able to tell if you watched my video that went out on Friday, my introduction was somewhat outperformed by the screaming kids on the nearby play equipment, but that's, that is what it is. I'm glad they were enjoying themselves, and there were families in there having a thoroughly good time. It's nice to see the museum really busy, and it's events like this that keep drawing people back to the Tank Museum. And I've said it before, the Tank Museum is one of those rare museums that doesn't sit on its laurels. It's constantly reinventing its displays and putting new stuff out there in front of the public. So, like for instance the World War II hall, it's largely the same vehicles you may have seen 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, but they've repositioned them, done all of the display material around them, and you've now got a cohesive story of various campaigns during the Second World War, and it makes for a much more interesting experience with vehicles grouped together in a logical fashion. And you've got other exhibitions like the Tank Men exhibition, which focuses on those first tank crews from the First World War, set in amongst those few remaining First World War tanks that the museum holds. You've got the War Horse exhibition, obviously linked in with that particular film, that is very popular with the children and the families, and is very interactive with talking dioramas and vehicles. So very interesting, and that leads into a little bit of an interwar period where you've got a few of the vehicles, the test vehicles that were being produced. And then you go on and have a look at this modern, so there's tons of stuff. Let's say over 300 military vehicles on display in the main museum, and well over 100 more in the Vehicle Conservation Centre, which is usually open for about an hour after lunch most days if they've got staff, and indeed it was open briefly while I was there, so I shot over to have a look. Although you can't get down on the floor or not, except on special event days, you can't go down on the floor in amongst the vehicles because they're very tightly packed in there. It is quite incredible to see, because it's like some kid has got all of their toy vehicles and stacked them up and put them in next to each other in this room. It's incredible, this is one of the joys of the Tank Museum, why I say it's one of the best military vehicle collections in the world. Not only have they got hundreds of vehicles on display inside the museum, but they've got a huge catalogue of other vehicles, including test vehicles and prototypes that they can show off to people. So they've got constantly, they can reinvent those displays. that's the backdrop, and then on top of that, like I say, you've got all of these display tables with some absolutely eye-wateringly beautiful scale models. As I say, there was several groups there displaying aircraft, including RC aircraft and RC tanks for that matter. There was also another group that were doing larger scale naval ships and stuff like that. Huge models, really detailed, really interesting to look at across a whole range of time periods. And then of course the usual range of tanks and aircraft. One particular gentleman I had a really long chat with, Steve Bell. His collection was just the stuff that he brought along, including two different sizes of German train artillery, these gigantic guns, rail mounted guns that are huge, and he's done it in two scales. In fact, he said he has a third scale which is even bigger, that he couldn't bring it because it's over 6 foot long, and that's just the gun. So quite a level of insanity that I think that us gamers can appreciate, because which of us hasn't painted the same period in two different scales? I certainly have, and I know a few others that have as well. So these are they're not painting models to game with, but there's lots of transferable and overlapping skills, and certainly that infusion, that passion for history and detail is very much on display, and there is a connection. I was talking to loads of people that day. No one batted an eyelid when I said, well, I paint miniatures for wargaming, because we all share the same geekdom. That was really interesting and fun to see. I also managed to, there was a couple of traders there, or several traders there, selling a range of plastic kits from all the usual manufacturers, but also selling equipment and stuff. I only bought a little bit because some of it's a bit specialist, but I bought a few little items. And of course the museum's shop itself is always really well stocked with a range of paints, plastic kits of different sorts, and even some wargaming material there, so well worth having a look at that. And I can honestly say I came out the shop with a few items. So as I say, well worth visiting the Tank Museum on its own, but even better when you've got a show like that set in amongst it. And it was just really heartening to see so many families coming and enjoying the whole day. And and obviously there were some people who came because they specifically knew about the model show, but there were also plenty of people who were pleasantly surprised to find the model show on, because they'd gone to see the big vehicles, but they got to see these wonderful little works of art as well. So certainly playing up, lots of fathers going around wide-eyed, dragging their sons around and going, I used to make these sort of things. So wonderful to see, really enjoyable, and even my wife enjoyed it. And she's been to the Tank Museum far too many times for someone who's not really interested in military history, but she enjoyed the show, and she was quite impressed, in fact, with how the museum has reinvented itself, made itself very much more interactive, especially for children. You want to bring your kids along and them to enjoy and learn the history, and so there's a lot more emphasis in the museum on presenting information for the adults. Of course, we're there because we want to enjoy it, but also presenting information in a child-friendly way that engages them. So yeah, my favourite museum, I think, by far, and arguably the best military vehicle collection in the world, particularly because the museum isn't just an array of vehicles with signposts in front of them. They've gone to the effort of really displaying these tanks in an innovative way that really speaks to visitors, particularly if they're not nerdy experts such as us, just ordinary laymen. It's telling the story. This is what museums are meant to be doing. They're meant to be teaching, not only curating the collection and preserving it, but telling the story of that collection. And I think the Tank Museum does that better than any museum that I know. So over the weekend I wasn't just at the Tank Museum, I was a lucky boy. We went and did some National Trust properties. I got to visit a little local museum and see some railway vehicles that lay out in a little local museum. I'll try and put some pictures up on the community tab if I can remember to do it. And then on the way home, lucky me, we were struggling to find something to do on our drive back, and we decided to go into Winchester, and the wife said, why don't you go to the Green Jackets Museum? Because she knows I really enjoyed it, and I got to go and see the Waterloo diorama again. Now, I've done a video of my trip to Bovetton on Friday, so hopefully go and see that. If you haven't watched it already, go and watch that. Next Friday I'll have a video up showing some film from inside the Green Jackets Museum and the Waterloo diorama. That is, I mean, my pictures just can't do it justice. It is well worth going and seeing this diorama in its full glory. Over 30,000 miniatures. You know, absolutely huge. It doesn't depict a particular moment in the battle, but it depicts like various events that take place during the day. But it is quite a spectacular sight. A huge table layout with models all over, and you know, quite a sight to behold. And I spent probably an hour just looking at that. Thankfully, that museum wasn't very busy. There was a few families walking through, but a lot of the time I was able to stay in the Waterloo diorama, listen to the narration from Kate Adie several times, taking some pictures and some film, and just generally enjoying the model in a lot more detail. Last time I went, I didn't have a lot of time, and I had to sort of rush through rather quick. This time I could spend a lot of time having a look. And if if you've got even a passing interest in the Battle of Waterloo or the Napoleonic era, then you've got to seek out this particular exhibit. It is quite spectacular. It is something else, something truly amazing to behold, and we're just privileged to be able to have access to it. Recently preserved, they do a really good job of maintaining it. The cleaning process alone for this huge diorama is mind-boggling, even though it's in a glass case. I mean, once upon a time it was actually open to the air, and so dust was a real problem. They cleaned the whole model, and they've now got an air filtration system inside the glass to keep the model as pristine as possible. So lots of tiny lovely little details. As you go around, you see these little vignettes, little scenes, particular models and character figures, well worth going to see. So as I say, my video on that will be out next Friday. So perhaps understandably, when I talk about my hobby update for the week, there's not really much to say, because the week we went Sunday to Tuesday. I've been straight back to work afterwards. I haven't had time to do anything else really. I haven't even had a chance to write a proper script for today, so I'm winging it today. So apologies if I'm umming and erring a little bit. I did, as you mentioned last week, I mentioned that I was going to trying to finish the rigging on my ships, my 1,200 scale ships. I did finish them all. I managed to do the rigging with some serious swearing involved. I even managed to make some little bases with some of the longboats in the rules. You can use these to try and do boarding actions and things like that. So I even managed to finish those, so that select collection is finished. All I need to do now is put some labels on with the names of the ships, which I've just worked out thanks to the help of my friend Ray. I've come up with a list of names for the ships. So that's the last thing I'm going to try and do in the next couple of days, and then I can call that project done. I've already started priming some models for the next set of things to go on my painting table. So there are some more of these 6mm models from Slug Industries. I did mention them last week. Lovely figure models. There's a lovely church there and a couple of small buildings that I'm going to start painting up. Hopefully I'll get started on at the weekend, but I've got a ton on. I've got game on Friday, game on Sunday, game on Monday. I'm a lucky boy, what can I say? So that's it for this week. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave it there. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share, and of course click the bell notification icon if you want to stay up to date with my weekly videos. And please leave your comments in the discussion below. I'd love to hear what you think, what I've been up to, and the conversation that's what this channel's all about, the conversation. So look after yourself. So until next week, look after yourself, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.